Lawless join.
All right, so let's go ahead. So what did you discuss yesterday in this list of things?
10 questions we went through.
Okay. So what's the answer to number one? What should you do?
Well, I think if the project is no longer viable, that means that you would have done some sort of assessment. So it's time to talk to the sponsors and stakeholders to let them be aware.
Very good. That's it. Number two. What was the outcome when you discussed it?
We need to validate again with stakeholders because the projected charter is not aligned with the project.
Right. So these
case or something.
You're correct. So these are beyond the project manager's capability. If the charter doesn't align, it's obvious again, like Carice said, you can infer that some analyses has been done and you're aware of this condition. So what should be done is you're going to go back to the drawing board to either re-charter or leave it up to the powers that be, but they need to get involved. So this is beyond the project manager's authority.
Yeah.
But
could you also look at that as you know, there's I don't know if this is where you were going with it, but maybe there were changes being, oh no, it wouldn't be part of the project, but I was thinking that maybe there might have been changes that are happening, or it's clear that they want something different.
so changes, if not managed, could end up in this condition. It could. But obviously there's been some misalignment and it's beyond what the PM can address without stakeholder involvement. All right, number three. What did you come up with?
We need to update the risk register.
And also
Not the first thing. That wouldn't be the first thing.
New stakeholders joined the project.
What's the first thing you would do?
I would meet them to assess their interests, their power.
So stakeholders engagement.
That would be like you're in line, but what is the first? I think Carice mentioned the first thing. What's the first thing again? Let's process it. Let's make it a process. So what's the first process you would
identify stakeholders?
Exactly. That's it. You identify them before anything else. If new stakeholders join, you're not going to get into the assessment matrix just yet. But if the options don't have to create a power interest grid, influence impact grid, stakeholder cube, salience model, if none of those are available and you have stakeholder engagement assessment matrix, that would be the next thing in line.
Okay.
All right, number four.
Stakeholders leave the project.
Same thing.
What's the first thing you would do?
So
I think for here, we said update the register because there really isn't much to do.
Good. So well done, Lovelace. You would update the stakeholder register. And upon updating the stakeholder register, because that information needs to be up to date, you could then look at impacts. You could then at that point look at impacts to the project, but you have to update the stakeholder register when stakeholders come or go.
That's what I feel like the third one, right? Third
Same
question.
thing. So yeah, same thing. When stakeholders join, update the register. When stakeholders leave, update the register first.
Yeah, that's what I was telling, like, because they didn't mention here when exactly these new stakeholders joined. So first thing we have to update the stakeholder register, right? So
That's
you're
right.
saying when we identify and when the new stakeholder join, that is the process where we update the stakeholder register, right?
Yeah, when new stakeholders join, update the register. When stakeholders leave, also update the register, take them out of the register.
Correct, yeah. This is what we discussed yesterday. That's correct.
Can I I would also add that after doing that, you also would have to assess, like, those stakeholders might be risk owners, and things like that. So you would also have to update
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
those.
there are many things that would happen in a thread, but what I'm really after is what is the first thing that you would do? Because that's what PMI is going for. Then if that option isn't available, then of course you would think of all the other bits that could happen.
Oh, sorry, I was
yeah.
going down a whole stream. You do this, then this, then this, then this.
Well, there are many. I
The
mean,
whole-
you could mention 10 things for each one of these. So yeah, we're going for
I
the
just
big
wanted to
ticket.
I just wanted to point out it's not just like taking the name off of something.
Right, right. There's a number of things that will happen. Number 6. No, number 5, I beg your pardon.
No problem. The project management plan is no longer realistic. So again, we need to validate with either project manager and the stakeholders. Maybe.
There's something you could do proactively.
Involve the stakeholders all the time.
What exactly would you involve them for?
Yeah, during the plan, it's not right.
Yeah, but you need to do something as a PM. So think about it. You work in this company, the project is not going to be stopped, but the plan is the problem. So what would you do if a plan is not realistic?
I think you would probably seek out alternatives, or like to come up with some analysis for like what could work
There you go. So what do we
I-
call that?
as alternatives analysis.
You could do alternatives analysis, and that would eventually lead to a trade-off or a rebaseline or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. But the bottom line is proactivity. Yeah.
But here, all the team members will involve, right?
Yes, you should involve team members who are involved in the work so that they can participate, as Corey said, in whatever alternatives you are analyzing.
Okay. So if there is an option, alternative analysis, then that is the best answer.
Yeah, you could do alternatives analysis. The
Okay.
bottom line is to find out what to do. We already know it's not realistic. So if the option says, find out if the plan is realistic, of course, that's a dumb answer because we've already done that. The question says it's no longer realistic. So we don't need to do that step. What we need to do is be proactive and find a solution.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as we can't, as you said, we can't shut down the project, and our whole position is to be able to try and see if we can satisfy the customer. So we have to, I guess, also educate, but also find ways to
Yeah.
make sure that we can do that. So if it is like as you were saying, like a trade-off, or there are certain things that you can make recommendations to move forward, because you want to try and make sure that we don't say no, we can't do, but figure out ways that we can do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Good.
Next, the 6th one, right?
Number 6. Yeah.
So number 6, project scope needs to be enlarged. We talked so extensively about 5 and 6. 6, we took 2 different approaches. One approach was to close the current phase and then go back to the drawing board and figure out what the enlargement needs to be, so we can make sure that we're satisfying the stakeholders.
Okay. So you may not need to touch the phase, to be honest, depending on what kind of project it is.
Yeah.
So if it needs to be enlarged, the first step needs to be to make it definite and specific. What scope are we going to add? It's like a customer coming and saying, we want additional scope. In the world of Agile, it's not a big deal. You throw them in the backlog. But in the world of traditional, you got to document that, and it has to be specific because we know scope is fixed. So we need to know what the scope is. So you need to, again, break down whatever request or whatever additions need to happen. And then you need to estimate those from a cost perspective, from a
Mhm.
schedule perspective, and it's really testing you on rebaselining. Again, it's
Mhm.
It's change management, through change management, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Rebaseline. All right, number 7 is similar.
yeah,
What did you come up with for that one?
enlarged without permission. So we need to do the impact analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well done. You got it. That's it.
Mhm.
You got it. Because what you don't want to do is just say cancel whatever the change was. It's, the PMI sometimes could say cancel whatever was done. It was done illegally. No, don't do that. You're very correct. Do an impact analysis first.
Mhm.
Understand what it touched, understand the ramifications, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Good deal. All
Yeah.
right.
So anyone want to take that? Question 8. You anticipate a scope change will be needed downstream on the project as a result of current conditions. What should you do? As a result of
think-
current conditions.
I think from this one, we also discussed evaluating the impact on the scope of the project. And if it's depending on, the impact, then we complete a change request and take it through CRB or CRC.
You got it. You got it. Yeah, that's pretty much the same vein. It's all changes. How are you going to manage
Yeah.
a change? So you're thinking it could happen, right? You're kind of sensing it, but you got to be proactive. At the same time, you got to be proactive in such a way that you're not spending resources that have not been assigned. So in a lot of cases, you could use any contingency reserves of time or money to do things like that. This is project management. So as long as it's within your budget and within your contingency to do these little analyses with your team, that's fine. That's proactivity.
what
Would this also need to be placed on the risk register as well?
You could put it on the risk register as something that you're anticipating.
Mhm.
It's what you're anticipating, right? These
But again,
changes.
when we anticipate, right? Is it beginning of before we do the cost baseline, or during the execution, or in the middle of the project?
Exactly. This is in the middle of the project. It's not at the beginning.
Okay.
It's said as a result of current conditions. So that
Oh,
means
okay.
you're flying full speed on the project, but you got to make sure that you also have your eye on it as a risk, because it could, or maybe it doesn't happen. You could anticipate something and it may not happen. So, but the first thing is obviously to do your more like analyses. It's
Yeah.
more like the whole define what it is,
Mhm.
like the Dixiv, identify what could cause the scope change. So it's going to be some analyses, and you just need to be proactive. That's all this is saying, and that's part of change management.
Change
PMI
management. Okay.
Yeah, PMI used the language, a change is about to occur or has occurred. They use that language a lot. So it's all part of your job as a PM. All right.
what about, I mean, I get that, but what about another angle, like taking preventative actions so that you don't have like, I don't know, scope creep or something like that?
It's a good perspective. PMI's position on this has changed over time. So a scope change will be needed. It's going to be needed. Not that it will occur, or not that it's scope creep. That's not been divulged right now. So we can kind of glean from the way it's saying, due to current conditions, it's like you don't really have much of a say because these conditions have caused it. So your best bet is to manage it proactively as opposed to circumvent it. And you got to look out for those questions that give you the circumvents the change. May not be the best option because it's based on current conditions. Good deal. All right. Now, if you got a question that said, you anticipate an unnecessary scope change will be requested, you could tackle it from that angle, but PMI hardly ever comes from that angle. They want you to be proactive. They want you to take action. They're testing you on they're really doing more on testing your action and decision making as opposed to testing your ability to circumvent unnecessary change. But sometimes you have to do that as a PM as well.
Like, for example, there was one question right here, the project scope enlarged without.
There you go.
This-
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. You
Done.
got it.
Yeah.
But then you see again, it already happened, but you still did the impact analysis, which is the right thing to do, not circumvent, not shut down the change or reverse the change. That is not the right thing to do because it could trigger unknown behaviors if you just back out of the change without finding, okay, what have they done? Let's see the impact. What impact has it made to our work?
Mhm.
Good deal. All right.
So number 9, right?
Yep.
This is a customer rejects a deliverable.
I think this one we talked about control scope and then perform integrated change control.
Mm-hmm. So what should you do first, like in practical terms?
So in Agile, I think we discussed about validating the definition of done, right? Like why this got rejected.
That's a good perspective. What about in traditional?
Scope statement. Validate the scope statement.
Well, why can't you just ask them the same thing? What is it that,
Because in
Mhm.
predictive, we don't have definition of done, right?
Well, you have
But-
something.
Scope, validate scope, I think, right? Scope statement, that's what we discussed.
Yeah, you got a number of things. So, Carice, do you want to tell us what you're thinking, and Corvin, if you're in that same vein, you
well, you can
folks tell me.
you can let Corbin go.
Corvin, go for it.
Mhm.
What do you think? What do we have in traditional that is not called the definition of done, but it could help us?
You have your requirements,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good thing, yeah.
have your um yeah, you have your scope baseline.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the WBS would have decomposed all the work that the work or what all the little deliverables and whatever went into those deliverables.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even though my thing is like in both predictive and agile, you're trying to make sure that you serve the customer. Even in predictive, you want to make sure that whatever you're producing is valuable. So you'd have to ask them and use those documents to help you figure out, well, what would they like changed? You can go back to even back to the project charter to see what is it that what they wanted. Go back to the benefits management plan and see, well, what was the expected benefit that they expected to have? But I don't know.
Good. You mentioned a number of things, and all of those are relevant. Everything that you get before validate scope can help you with number 9. So even though you've got all those things you mentioned, the scope baseline and all those other bits, what should you do? You should be proactive to ask a simple question or to glean from if that. So in the world of traditional, we have a deliverable acceptance form or product acceptance form. And part of that form is why I'm rejecting this thing. And maybe if that doesn't exist, you know, simple question, kind of like you alluded to, you got all of these documents. It should be straightforward, or maybe it's not. So you need to get down to the bottom of why was there a rejection?
Yeah,
And then what will happen after you understand why there was a rejection?
You will try to figure out what changes need to be made,
There you go.
document those changes,
Yep.
send it back through the process.
Very good. You got it. You got it. Good. All right. Number 10.
that's
On
not-
number, go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
no, okay, now let's go ahead.
On number 10, we talked about one, either negotiating the scope. If it's in the predictive world, then scope is fixed, but schedule and budget are flexible. And if that's the case, then we can either fast track or crash. And in the agile world, we would just descope, either reduce the scope and finish what we have and then put the rest back in the backlog.
Great. Very good. Awesome. All right. Number 11.
Yeah, we just discussed only 10 questions, so now we are
Okay.
doing,
So a schedule change is likely to occur in a few weeks. What do you understand by that?
maybe the scope is increasing or somebody leaving, the team member leaving, or, you know,
You can't, so be careful with that. So so when they give you schedule,
mhm,
even though it could be what you said, you probably don't want to touch any of those because it could lead you to a wrong answer.
okay.
So
Mhm.
the schedule is no longer achievable. No, beg your pardon. A schedule change is likely to occur. It may not be because of scope. It may be because of something else.
Resources may not be available.
Could be many things. So the bottom line is it's likely to occur. What should you do? Like in a game of chess. I
Like,
anticipate Lovelace is going to make a move in this direction. So what should I do when playing a game of chess?
you mean we need to talk about contingencies?
Okay. But beyond that, what is the umbrella thing I need to do? There are many things. Contingencies is one that for sure, but there could be many more. So I want you to just give me one umbrella thought. Could be a thought. It boils down to the same thing we've been saying.
Assess the impact of the change.
Say that again.
Assess the impact of the possible change.
There you go. Yeah, that's it. That's
What is
it.
that? What is that?
Assess the impact of the possible change and be proactive to think ahead. So part of what you were saying, contingency, that
Mhm.
would also fall into that bucket.
Okay,
Yeah, it's always analyze.
assess, okay.
Yeah, assess, analyze, see if it has it made a change to something? No, it hasn't. It could. Okay, let's analyze. What could it be? What could the impact be? And
Mhm.
then you begin talking about things like, okay, are there any contingencies for this? And depending on the nature of the change and what budget you have for project management, you may do this at a very high level, or maybe you do it at a lower level. It really depends on the timeline. But
Yeah.
what I want you to get into the habit of thinking is there's always some sort of analysis
Mhm.
and some sort of choosing the best alternative before going ahead with whatever the question is. All these questions are more
Yeah.
analysis. Yeah.
You just have to ride the Dig Siv train. Not all the way, but sometimes, I mean, you don't, like in this question, you don't know if it's actually happening, but you do need to, you need to understand it, you know, if people come and they say, oh, you know, Mary's leaving, Mary says she wants to take 2 days off, like, oh, she's taking 2 days off, but you need to think about what that could do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like a
And
game of
sometimes,
chess.
sometimes maybe because of external conditions, like sometimes, right, weather, compliance, anything.
I guess the point is like, you're not gonna just jump off a hunch.
Yeah, okay,
You need to understand what you're dealing with, and if it does happen,
sure. Yeah, got it.
think about things that you need to do or put in place.
Right. Right. Good, good, good discussion.
Mhm.
All right. What's next?
The project is not going as planned. You are now late. What should you do?
Okay. What should you do?
It sounds like it'll be similar to, is it number 10?
Schedule.
Yeah.
Very similar. So what should you do?
Either crash or fast track.
Good.
Okay.
Now, what about in circumstances where you may not be able to crash or fast track? There could be other options on the exam, so just be ready for things like that. There are other things you could do. You could de-scope if you're in the world, like you said, you know, if you're in the world of
Agile.
agile, yeah, because it's flexible. But in the world of traditional, you just got to think of other options, things that you could do. You know, if you're late and you cannot crash or fast track, you could re-baseline. There's absolutely nothing wrong
Oh,
in
okay.
re-baselining. You can always go to management and beg for mercy.
Yeah,
So
we'll
don't rule that out.
re-baseline.
Huh?
True. We'll re-baseline instead of asking for mercy.
Well, you know, it's still the same. You know, management, they're always like, well, you said it would be this. No. So it's still some sort of, you know, clemency, if you will.
Is this the time
But
whenever what if scenario analysis?
Exactly. You could look at this as what if scenario analysis. So in your schedule, you could do an analysis of, okay, if we do this, what impact will it have on the schedule? You know, a what if scenario analysis is really opening up your schedule data and manipulating it and saying, what will happen if I do this or that kind of thing.
So Phil, would this have been something that we would have already identified as part of risk assessment?
It could be.
And then maybe implementing, you know, whatever the risk response is.
It could be, but at the same time, it might just come upon you. Like number 12 could just come up. Maybe you didn't see it coming, you know, it just happened.
Okay.
I think if we end up having to share with management that we're behind schedule, you know, if there are any positive things you could bring up, like we're behind schedule, but we're producing a lot of, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
That's great. Like, you know, if there's anything you could say about that iron triangle, you want to highlight it so that they can continue to have confidence in the fact that you are trying to
Yeah.
Right. And then there's transparency there too. You're right.
Good deal. All right, let's talk about number 13. Project budget has enlarged without following proper protocol.
Again, re-baseline, right?
What would you do before that?
And analysis again.
Yeah, exactly what you said in the beginning, Chandra. So you said impact analysis. So if the budget has enlarged, you need to ask, why did it enlarge? How did it slip through the cracks? How did we not follow proper protocol? What impact has it had on the scope that has been done so far? You want to understand what it is, and so on and so forth,
Okay.
before doing anything else. usually the answer that they're looking for is not too far away. If you miss that initial impact analysis, then whatever else you're going to choose is going to be wrong.
Yeah,
And PMI, they're good at craftily phrasing the question so that it seems like you should just go jump out and take action. But no, you should always understand what you're dealing with.
okay.
All right. Quality has not been achieved. What should you do? So let's talk about Agile first. Maybe quality is in your definition of done
Mm.
and it hasn't been achieved. What's the ramification of that?
We need to validate the definition of done and correct it, right? First, we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be redone. And if that means putting something back into the backlog
Mhm.
as opposed to it being shippable,
Yeah,
then of course, yeah. All right.
but in predictive,
In the world of predictive, what do you think?
whatever was not achieved, whatever findings we need to go through the change management and implement them.
Exactly. You need to have a retake. So I don't know if you remember any of my quality data flows, but in the quality data flow, I show what happens if in control quality hasn't been achieved. You're going to have some quality control measurements that feed back into managed quality, which is quality assurance. And you got to understand, why did this happen? Why was quality not achieved? How do we achieve quality? And then there could be a change request for that, whether it's for process quality or product quality, whatever the case.
So for 14, then we should say in predictive, do the analysis again.
Always do an analysis. Otherwise, so I know we call it empiricism in the world of Agile. In the world of predictive, we say analysis, but the analysis is just like breathing in the world of project management. You shouldn't do anything without some sort of analysis, otherwise it's guesswork.
So here it is right, like root cause analysis or something like that.
Exactly. You could do an RCA.
Mhm.
You could use a number of tools to get down to the bottom of why quality was not achieved.
Yeah,
And then in your quality assurance, you want to ask, what step in the process failed or needs improvement, that kind of thing.
okay.
You could look at your control chart.
You could also look at a control chart. If you had a product, the
Mhm.
data will tell you. Yeah, the data will tell you, whether you're in or out of control. And if you're out of control, then you could go back to QA and find out what to do to better your chances of being in control.
But here, if there is a scenario, like little bit extended, quality is not being achieved, but the project is in control based on the control chart. What will you do next?
So there's no way that you are in control and quality is not known. So if we're talking about a product,
Mhm.
yeah, there's no way that your project is in control.
Okay.
Your process overall is out of control if quality is not being achieved, whatever we're defining quality as. But you bring up a good point. There's product quality and there's project quality. And quality could just be following good engineering practices, peer reviews, doing a number of things. So maybe your product is getting away with looking good, but it's only by chance because you're not really following the processes. So there are many angles you could look at it, but the bottom line is you do need to understand why this is happening and take action.
Okay.
And number 15 is more specific. Defect is discovered when the team is inspecting the deliverable. What should you do?
Defect repair.
What should you do before that?
An assessment.
There you go. What are you going to be assessing?
Assessing the impact of the defect.
Good. What else?
After, oh, go ahead, Chandra.
No, sorry, sir. I don't know.
What is the first, what should come before impact? Where defect is concerned.
Maybe again RCA.
Good. There you go. Root cause analysis. Always
Oh.
want to know, where is this coming from? Why did this happen? Those will always be first. And then on a lot of the questions, they could take those out. And like Carice was joking, the Dixiv train. Yeah, because you either have to define the problem, identify the root cause, generate alternatives, or you're faced with choosing an alternative. But usually those first three, defining what the problem is, identifying the root cause, generating alternatives, those are quite heavy. They just mask them, but it will be very prominent, you know, that whole assessment thing. All right, so the defect is discovered, you do your impact analysis. Eventually you do need to fix it anyway, but you cannot fix it without doing those things we mentioned.
All right.
Number 16, you're the project manager, as Chandra pointed out in the beginning. And number 16 is happening. What should you do?
In Agile, well, like the problem solving and confronting conflict solution, right?
I think
Okay,
you identify the source of the conflict.
good.
Mhm.
That's what I'm
That's the
talking
stage.
about.
Yeah.
Thank you. You got it. Exactly.
So,
Because if you do your assessment, you could very well leave them alone to tough it out. If it's,
yeah, okay.
you know, it doesn't always have to be, oh, it's a major issue that they are. No, it could just be something that's good, healthy conflict. You know, so always look at the question and understand, but the safer options are those in the content outline. And I like the way you had that at the ready. That was good. Both of you, both Carice and Lovelace had that at the ready. So can you repeat what you said?
Looking at the source and stage of the conflict or the argument.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Source and stage. Good deal. All right.
Version book.
Good. Good. Yeah, that's the way to do it. All right. Number 17. Additional resources are needed on the project. What should you do?
Again, we need to see why we need.
Well, that's already been established. So questions that tell you resources are needed,
Okay.
it's already established they are needed for a reason. So that probably comes with part of the question. So if you know that they're needed and the rationale, what should you do?
Do we already know the type of resources that are needed?
You may or may not. It depends. You may or may not. But the way the question is worded, you can probably guess that you got some ideas about the nature of resources that are needed.
And then do we acquire the resources and then go back to developing?
You could, that could be an option. Yeah. So I like the way you've gone through in your head, you've gone through the steps in resource management. Because if you know what is needed, then the next step is to go get them.
Yeah.
When you
Good.
have to estimate them first.
So that's exactly what we'll say in the beginning. It's likely that you've got an idea of the resource type or quantity, but again, you can always look at the options. So if the options just jump straight to other things, then you know that all that stuff, quantity and type, has been done. But if not, you know, I would usually go with, except the questions specifically says, your project manager on the project, you have determined that You have determined additional resources of a certain type are needed. What should you do next? So if it's told you that, then you wouldn't choose an option that has that in. It would have to be something else.
Then
And
it
they're
will
good. They're
directly
good.
acquire resources, right?
Exactly, acquire resources. And just so you know, the PMI are they're very good at doing that. They give you some breadcrumbs in the beginning, and if you miss those crumbs, you are going to find the question either hard to answer, or you might think that the question is easy, but because you missed the breadcrumbs, you missed the key, and even though your option is there, guess what? It's wrong. So you need to look for the clues. They give you clues. Always be on the lookout for the clues.
By the time we do all that, all the time is gone.
Well, no, because you need to get into beast mode. So getting into beast mode, it comes with a lot of practice. In beast mode, you can see a block of text, and it's like being on steroids. You can see like 3 or 4 keywords just looking straight at it. You know, like looking at this text on the screen, I'm already seeing so much. And honestly, you should train yourself to be able to just pick things out. Just look at it one time and try to just see the composite at once. It will help you trying to do that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get to number 20 and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah. So next is new team members. You mean like go 18, 19, 20, right?
Yes. Where are we now?
18.
18. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. New team members join the project. So what are you going to do?
Develop that team.
Good. Good. And let's dig a little bit deep into develop the team. So how do you know what to develop them in?
Got
Assess
it.
their
So
skills, right? First, or should we do that?
Say that again.
Assess the skills.
Good. Okay. Assess the skills. And what else? You assess the skills in context of what?
In context of what the role, maybe.
Good. You got it. Very good. Assess the skills in context of what they're meant to be doing. So what do we call that? We call it, who can answer? It's an output of acquire resources that tells us what the team is doing. What do we call that? Anyone know?
would that be managed project knowledge? No,
It's an output I'm looking for.
an output.
Yeah, it's an output of acquire resources. You acquire the resources, and then you're going to get 2 outputs. One is for the people and one is for the non-human. You remember what they are?
So you get physical team assignments, you get the project team assignments, and
You got it. Physical resource assignments and project team assignments. And the project team assignments is what is going to guide you as far as what their responsibilities are. Very good. Awesome.
So project team assignment.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So based on the project team assignments, you know the training that they need, training to send them for. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Number 19.
So there has been a hiring freeze. Project work is not progressing effectively. What should we do? So here definitely crashing, I think. No, not crashing, fast tracking. Maybe.
You think so?
well, you're gonna have to discuss with management.
Yeah, Okay.
Well, first of all,
That's
what do
never.
you mean by-
We discuss it with the
Yeah,
team
yeah.
first.
Sorry, because fast tracking is already taking action that should not be done.
There you go. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we figure out what the RCA, figure out what the root cause is? Why the
Exactly.
project is not progressing?
And exactly. And let's look at the question one more time, because I use this as an illustration of what these jokers at PMI do.
Hmm.
The first statement is just to induce panic. What does
Mhm.
that have to do with the second statement?
Nothing.
Exactly. So beware of red herrings. Okay, there's been a hiring freeze. So what? For all we know, we've got all the people we need. So the
Mm.
key thing, the problem is work is not progressing effectively. That's the real problem.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how do we attack our effectiveness, and what is the root cause for a lack of effectiveness? Could be a discussion. So beware of the red herrings, you're going to get some of them. You just plant them there to distract you. All right. So,
They
yep.
do a wonderful job of that.
Yep, that's their stock in trade.
Hmm.
All right. Number 20, the final one.
So the communications management plan is not working as planned.
Mhm.
Same thing, do some type of an assessment to figure out
Review
RCA again.
Okay,
communications management plan.
good. And which process would you really be doing this stuff in?
Monitoring.
Monitoring and control.
You got it. You got it. That's pretty much where they go with this. They want you to know where are you and what are some of the things you should do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome job. I think we did well in exercising our thinking, and that was really the aim of this. A lot of them don't have just one single answer, but in the order of occurrence of what should happen, a lot of it is going to be analysis. I had a student that came out of the exam some couple of years ago, and he said, Phil, this whole thing is just dixive. Everything is always dixive. It's define the problem. If you're not able to effectively define what the problem is on a PMI question, then you're going to get it wrong. So you need to define the problem, identify what is causing it. So you see what we did in one of the questions, we backtracked and said, wait a minute, when I really identify the root cause, it's not the hiring freeze. The hiring freeze is not causing, you get what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you can look at it with that bias of, we got to do this, define, identify, and so on, you're gonna be good.
And for me, I think, as a leader, you need to be mindful that you're working within a system. So you can't just respond. You can't be reactionary.
Mhm.
You have to have a paper trail, or you have to have a rationale for making any move.
Right.
So that's why it's important to just know what you're dealing with and understand, like, in everything that I'm doing, because you have to make tough decisions sometimes.
Mhm.
Some that, like, you might really want something to happen on a project, but there are reasons why you can't just say, oh, I love this thing, let me just go and do it. So that's why it's important to, like, know the beast that you're dealing with, be
Mhm.
able to recognize it, understand how, like, in this bigger system of ecosystem of things, how it could change the whole picture of what you're looking at, and then be proactive about thinking about what are some ways that you could help your objectives be realized, even if it changes a little bit.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. Good
So
deal.
the remaining, should we go through tomorrow with you, Phil?
We can just keep going. Actually, my intent is for everyone on the call, whoever is on, to go through. So Thursdays are always extremely busy because I have Project Leadership Institute coaching and training. But I would love for folks to get on and just keep going through this.
Yeah.
Just keep going and keep challenging. There's absolutely nothing wrong in challenging thoughts and ideas, as you did. A lot of you did that today, and that's good. Always challenge, always come up with a counter, and then try to rationalize why it could be one or something else, you know.
All right.
Good deal. All right. Any impediments that I missed? Oh, Lovelace didn't give hers. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and Lovelace can give us her update.